Hi everybody, just by way of an update, Mayor's just running a little bit late. We'll give him until 12:45. If not, then I'll step in to get service.
everyone, and welcome to today's council meeting on August the 28th, 2023. Individuals interested in participating in this meeting were eligible to register online using the delegation registration form at www.kitchener.ca/delegation or via email at delegation@kitchener.ca. Any written comments received prior to the commencement of this meeting have been circulated to members of council prior to the meeting and will form part of the public record. Before we begin the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge that today we're gathering on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. We recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land and honor the original caretakers who came before us. Our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. If I can ask those who are able to stand now for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you, everyone. And apologies for the slight delay in starting the meeting, but we had some competing issues that came up that we needed to balance, and so thank you, everyone, for your understanding. In terms of the minutes on motion by Councillor O'Dooney, the minutes of the regular meeting held June 26, 2023, and the special meetings held June 23rd, 29th, and August 14th is mailed to the Mayor and Councillors are accepted. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, you'll note the communications to file with respect to the flag requests. And now, Mr. Chapman, are you ready for your... Okay. We have an item that Mr. Chapman would like to begin with. Just 1 second. Go ahead, Mr. Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. Today is a happy day. I'm pleased to be here to acknowledge that one of our own colleagues has reached a significant milestone in their career with the city, and that's Justin Reedman, our General Manager of Development Services. Justin joined the city on July 2nd, 2013, and since that time has held a few roles with the city, but most recently has led our development function. I think you, as I have come to know him, as a leader with vision, who has, in a short time with the city, led significant change that has shaped not only the Kitchener that we see today, but the Kitchener that will evolve over the next 10, 20 years and for years to come beyond that. I've also found him to be a leader that leads with empathy in his team, and he's built an amazing team of leaders who lead with a lot of integrity in their interactions with staff on a day-to-day basis. And so it's my pleasure to count him as a colleague and to present him today with his 10-year service certificate. So please join me in congratulating him.
Well, Mr. Reedman, on behalf of Council, I too want to extend our congratulations to you and say thank you for your 10 years of leadership in the roles that you've held at the city. But in particular, as I reflect on the current one, I mean, there's been some amazing work that's been done by you and your team in terms of initiatives like our Housing for All strategic plan, focused on housing and much of the work that we've been doing in that space. The work that's been done by your teams in terms of our new updated economic development strategy, Make It Kitchener 2.0, as well as the work that's been done in terms of streamlining our approval processes, which certainly, from a planning and development perspective, which certainly has been well received both by our colleagues locally, but also by our colleagues at the provincial and federal governments. We were, when the pandemic hit, we didn't know that was going to happen, but we were well prepared because of the work that we had done proactively at that time. So really just want to say thank you and congratulate you. Thank you very much. Do you want to say any? If you want to, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic and Dan, for your kind words. It's been an honor to serve the Kitchener community over the last 10 years. I have an amazing team that I know puts their heart and soul into the work every day, and so I'm just really excited to see how Kitchener continues to grow and evolve and be part of that. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now move on then to item 5.2, the Age-Friendly Kitchener Action Plan with a status update. And I'll note that 10 minutes has been allocated for this presentation with two presenters. And so I would like to welcome Diane Kilby and Kathy Doherty-Masters from the Mayor's Advisory Council for Kitchener Seniors. And that group has been working handily on this issue for some time. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Diane.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. We would like to thank the Mayor, the Council, and City staff for this opportunity to speak today. Our delegation today is on the 2023 update of the Age-Friendly Kitchener Action Plan, which you've all received, I hope. We are Diane Kilby and Kathy Doherty-Masters. We are the incoming and past chairs of MACS, the Mayor's Advisory Council for Kitchener Seniors, a committee that has existed since the days of Mayor Dom Cardillo in the early 1980s. For more than 4 decades, this committee has been the voice of older adults in Kitchener, giving input through city staff on a vast array of topics that affect the lives of those over 55. Our motto is Live and Age Well, and it's our passion to make this motto a reality for every senior in the city. Next slide, please.
Great, thank you. So we're just going to ask the question, who are Kitchener's older adults? And this demographic actually has the widest range of all age groups, potentially a 50-year difference between the youngest and the oldest in this range. For our purposes, our age range is 55 plus. 2 generations actually from the same family can be into this demographic, and the needs are vastly different. For example, I'm in this age range, and so is my 90-year-old mom, who's up there in the middle picture showing off her crafts. And you can imagine that developing and implementing programs to meet the needs of both of us can be quite the challenge. We can see that Waterloo Region has just been granted $8.4 million to grow just over 3,000 new licensed childcare spaces. But in the next 15 years, projections indicate that older adult range in Kitchener will grow by about 37%, which is about 94,000 residents in Kitchener. And the most consistent growth is in the 90 to 100 plus year age range. Simply put, people are living healthier and longer lives. Just a fun fact that the census data in Canada shows that in 2018, there were 9,400 individuals who were over 100 years of age living in Canada. In 2022, that number has grown to 13,000. So obviously, people are living longer and healthier lives. Next slide. Thank you.
From the Age-Friendly Action Report, we can see that there are 4 main priorities: accessible and affordable neighborhoods, improved access to information, belonging, and connectedness and well-being. These are all incredibly important to older adults, and you can find that summary on pages 6 and 7 of the report. Success in these 4 areas can be measured by the way that older adults live, in what kind of dwelling, what services are provided, with whom they live, and the general feeling of well-being. We prefer to call this aging in the right place. It's a phrase that we hope you will add to your everyday discourse. As we age, our living situations may change. For some of us, it may mean downsizing. For some of us, living on a fixed income, it may mean struggling to hold on to our small apartment when REITs buy up the smaller buildings we call home to make money for their investors. For some of us, it might mean more restricted mobility or other age-related disabilities that change the way we are able to access services. For some, increased reliance on public transportation may or may not be affordable. For some of us, it may mean moving in with our children. The changes can be as diverse as we are as a community or as communities. Regardless, it is a fact that the majority of older adults want to age in place, age in the right place, meaning in the comfort and familiarity of a place that we know. Kitchener's growing. There are new builds everywhere you look. But the needs of older adults who might want to live in these buildings being considered during their planning stages? The biggest question, of course, is will we be able to afford them? But there are other considerations. Is thought given, or are there requirements for features like barrier-free corridors, wider doors, ramped entrances, brighter lighting, and accessible washrooms, to name just a few? Or are there opportunities in place for the city to work with landlords that allow for naturally occurring retirement communities, NORCs as we call them, where older adults have the chance to organize activities and arrange for services that come to us in our communal living spaces, places like condos or apartment buildings, or facilities like local churches or community centers or empty schools? Next slide, please.
So I've been part of MAX, will be my 5th year, and I would just like to share with you some of the successes that we have had over the last few years. In recent years, our committee has become much more representative of our diverse community, and we've added members that are advocates for underrepresented populations, and we've worked more closely with city staff. Our Senior of the Year celebration, which I know some of you attend, has had a greater number of nominations from a more diverse population than ever before, and the number of nominations is just steadily increasing every year. Another recent example is that we have a MAX Health and Wellness Subcommittee, and we partnered with city staff to create a more user-friendly active guide, which is up on the screen there, that included activities from all of our community centers. There were some challenges that older adults experienced signing up for activities in the city. The number one being that the age participation was often listed as 18+, which is quite broad. So our Health and Wellness Committee worked with city staff to create a new guide, available in both print, which is important, and online, which is specific to older adults and is very easy to navigate. Another suggestion that the subcommittee had was to institute a Try Us Free Week, which is on page 4 in the guide, so that older adults could try before they buy. Having a voice at the table with the city staff throughout the process made for great collaboration and really effective decision-making. We began this process just in the spring and were able to come out with the guide in for the fall, which is a great way to collaborate. We'd like to think of this project, though, in 2 ways, and respectfully, nothing about us without us. And we may have limited power, but we can and do have effective influence. And next slide, please.
So where do we go from here? The report answers that question on page 11, and you can find detailed notes there. However, we want to highlight 4. 1, that there's definitely a need to continue to gather information from older adults and respond by developing programs that meet the unique needs in the varied neighborhoods of our city. 2, For city programs to succeed, staff must work with different community groups to co-design programs that are culturally safe and inclusive. 3, virtual programming was very popular during the pandemic with older folks. It's still popular today. In fact, staff are now performing double duty as they balance continuing to offer both online programming and in-person programming. Obviously, continued support for both options needs to be considered by council. And finally, there's a need to continue to promote an image of aging and a positive image of aging, and to ensure that an age-friendly perspective is incorporated into the policies, the process, and the daily work of council and staff. Next slide, please.
So, what do we need from you? We need City Council to use an age-friendly lens when considering decisions. Max can give you that lens. Max is a diverse, well-organized, established citizens committee willing to collaborate and make our city a place to live and age well. Max should be at the table when decisions are being made, not after. Again, nothing about us without us. You are always welcome to our monthly meetings, which are the first Thursday of the month, and Mayor Barry attends each one, a tradition again started in the 1980s. We'll offer to sit down with you individually to have conversations about our needs and wants. Please reach out to the committee and we'll make time to get together to chat. Reach out anytime. Thank you very much for your time today, and we're happy to answer any questions that we can, but we also have some of the older adult city staff with us, so they might be able to answer some of the questions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, both Diane and Kathy, for the presentation and for all of your hard work. There are a number of people with questions, but I will say to my council colleagues, this is a very energetic and passionate group of individuals committed to serving our older adult population. And while I certainly enjoyed and valued my work with them, before I hit the magical age, I now officially am part of them in terms of my stage in life as well. It hit me hardest when I showed up at Shoppers Drug Mart one day and found out that I got a discount, which I guess it had a bonus on its own. But anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues, and we'll start with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Mayor Urbanovic, and thank you for coming in. And I really do appreciate the work that this committee does. And I was involved early on, and it's really dear to me. And one of the things that's really dear to me is about aging in place. Mm-hmm. And I'm going through that with my own family as well. So what I see here is, the question I wanted to ask is, do you see the older adult generation prefer to live in, like, I know they all want to live in their homes, but do they want to live in, let's say, apartment buildings and stuff like that? Because I find that they, from my experience, I find that they don't want to move into apartment buildings, or they don't want to live in retirement communities. So they want to live close to home, or, you know, have access to, like, let's say a bungalow that they can call on their own, and, like, even if it's just smaller, and have 3 or 4 of them on a single-use lot.
All of those are possibilities. Mm-hmm. All of those are possibilities. We're not one sort of homogenous group of people who with one sort of brand fits all. Some people want to downsize to apartments, and some people want to stay at home with facilities, making their homes more accessible so they can stay there. Some people don't have the option of staying in a home. They don't have the option of being in an apartment. They certainly don't have the option of being in retirement homes. It's a massive question, and the suggestions that you were making speaks to a lot of people, but not to every person.
Okay. Just that is not a loss on me. It's something I'm looking forward to helping the community in, especially in the ward I represent. And now when I look at the statistics, here, and I can see that, you know, the age-friendly demographic is significant in my ward and in Ward 2, and I guess it's very surprising because they're pretty well been developed around the same time. So, anyways, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ioannidis. Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and speaking to you, you know, identifying yourself as a senior, I got to say, you
Older adult for the record.
older adult, but you know, honestly saying you would put any 20-year-old to shame with your energy and vigor, and I think that's an important point because that's indicative of many of the older adults in our community. Without a question, they are the foundation of the city.
Yeah.
But also, more importantly, I think they can continue in being the pillars that continue to kind of grow us taller as well. So, you know, as we have healthier and active older adults, where do you see them playing a more participating role within the city, more so in volunteering? Are there barriers? Where can we grow that? And the second part of that question is, how can we tap into many newcomers that are coming to the community? And with them, they also have, you know, they're joint families, they have older adults within their household, and that have language barriers. How can we make sure that they're included in this community as well?
I would say to the volunteering piece, to the importance of having a variety of entry points is a really important piece, because you look at some older adults are very active in the community, because we do have many on our committee who are on other committees, and sometimes it's difficult to get together. But there are other times when older adults want to be part of the community, but getting to the event is sometimes difficult, or navigating some of the mobility issues that might happen might be part of it. So making sure that having somebody who can help to identify some of those barriers as part of the planning is a really important piece, instead of coming back after and saying, what could we have done? So I think, again, just reiterating that being at the table is a really important part of any kind of planning. And then the second question, I'm sorry again, was inclusive. Oh, inclusive. Why don't you take that one?
Oh, I don't know.
Okay, no, I'm sorry.
Well, partly it's addressed a little bit in terms of where do we go from here on that final page, in terms of it absolutely has to be that city staff work with groups that already exist in the city in order to bring in and make programs that are relevant, that and that reduce the barriers to participation, to involve other communities. I mean, we have the city's run programs, but some of those programs are very European in terms of their cultural relevance.
Right.
And so they don't speak to many people in the city, and I know that city staff is working diligently to change that picture.
Well, I got to say, I appreciate the fact that you are advocating for that aspect of diversity. That's a real part of our community now. The other question I had is carrying on with what Councillor Ioannidis has asked. The consideration, the importance of allowing options for residents to stay within their community, even though their lifestyle may change, their habitation requirements might change. And so where we play a role as a council is how we plan our city, how we grow our city, how our existing neighborhoods continue to morph and transition. As an advisory committee, what involvement do you guys have when we have these higher arching planning documents looking at places, more specifically missing middle and intensification and the density that's coming in our city?
We've had opportunities to put input into, through Carolyn and Bethany and so on, but I think it's important to be at a table where the decisions are being made in order to hear the voice firsthand. We really think that that's an important piece, because we know when we give input via, a survey or, just conversations, that we don't know how the intensity or the feeling is put forth beyond what if we had the chance to say it ourselves, I think that would really be important. So being at the table, we can't stress that enough. Like we said, a small example is just getting this document created, and it helped. It was in a very short period of time because we were sat at the table with city staff right away.
Well, that document creates the awareness for us to know
That's
where we
right.
got to do better.
Yeah.
But more importantly, we have to leverage on the tremendous value and experience that our older adults can provide us. And again, as we transition as a community as well. So thank you for all that
Yeah,
you're doing.
thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank you, Councillor Singh. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Diane and Kathy, thank you very much for your presentation. You know, it's no secret amongst this horseshoe that, you know, half of my life I've spent working with older adults in the city, and you know, the knowledge that I've learned from them over the number of years, you know, is insurmountable. And so I'm much better of a person, I think, because of some of the advice that my residents have given me over the last 23 years. And so, on the advisory committee, is there anybody that lives in long-term care on the committee?
No.
Okay. And I'm just thinking, I think that, you know, there's an opportunity right here to pair up with a few, you know, residents to have them become part of the dialogue of, you know, what didn't they have before they moved into a long-term care retirement home? What did you need what you've needed to stay in your home? And I think, you know, it's obvious, you know, you need barrier-free equipment, and you know, there's social supports that they need, and obviously the funding hasn't matched up with that. But I think there's an opportunity to learn from our older seniors who may, because there are residents that I know that could still be in their home at this point in time, but they didn't have the network, they didn't have the supports or the finances to stay there, and that's unfortunate. You know, I think everybody wants to stay in their home as long as possible.
Right.
And so I'd love to have a conversation, you know, with the committee to, you know, maybe explore a resident or two virtually being part of some of these discussions, because I think it'd be beneficial for the folks that are already on the committee, but also beneficial for a few residents in our community. And so, you know, talking about housing, I think one of the biggest concerns I have is, you know, we often talk about affordable housing, but it's quite often forgotten we need affordable housing for seniors. And so, as you mentioned, you know, investors buying up these properties and getting rid of, you know, people who are on pensions, and they can't afford to move into a retirement home, and they're not ready to move into long-term care. And so where do they go? And I think, you know, we need, as a federal, provincial, and municipal levels, we need to really, especially over the next 20 years, the amount of older adults that are going to be still continuing to live and thrive in our community, we need to focus on affordable seniors housing, because, you know, they're not going to have anywhere to go, you know. So affordable housing for lower income families, but affordable housing also for seniors who are on pensions or ODSP or yeah. So thank you for your work. It's you know, it's great to see people advocate, you know, individuals advocating for themselves, but also for part of their community, which is older adults and 55 and older, not older adults, but people who are older.
Yeah.
Anyways, but, and so thank you very much for all your work. And like I said, I'd love to have a discussion about long-term care.
If I can just respond to that, we have 3 subcommittees as part of MAC's Health and Wellness, Senior of the Year, and Housing. So we do have a smaller group that is very specific to the housing issue. So that might be a good way for somebody from a long-term care or an alternate housing situation to tap in, because they don't have to hear the whole meeting. They could just zero in on the housing subcommittee.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Can I ask staff a question, or do you want me to come back to that?
We'll come back to it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay.
Councillor Schneider. Thanks, Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much, Diane and Kathy, for coming in. I was really happy to hear the positive comments about the virtual programming during COVID and how that has continued. And I'm just wondering if you've seen any roadblocks with that, maybe due to a lack of computer technology literacy or anything like that. Is there anything maybe the city could do to help others become more comfortable with technology?
I'm going to turn that one over to Bethany Pierce. Are you okay? Sure. Yeah, because Bethany was instrumental in working with that part.
Through the chair. So we were really fortunate during COVID to get a New Horizons grant. So it's a federal grant that enabled us to purchase iPads with data and Chromebooks, and also hire an instructor to be able to offer basic essential training to ensure people did have those computer literacy skills. So we're continuing to build on those classes, and we've been able to expand them into a number of community centers as well. Also, the Bits and Bytes Computer Club at the Downtown Community Center also got a grant this past year and have set up a tech playground. So they've purchased different devices for people to try. They work with them to teach them how to do it. And then they know if they have to buy it in the future, how it works, or they can lend, we lend devices out to them so they can take them home and try them out for up to 30 days, and then they can renew it if they need to.
No, that's really great to hear. I just want to kind of maybe build on a little bit of what Councillor Deneau was talking about, those in long-term care homes. This is dear to my heart because my mother is in one. She's 93 and loves her iPad and loves all sorts of activities. I'm just wondering if maybe there's ever been any thought to, each long-term care home have their own programs and they have speakers coming in. Could that somehow be leveraged to go out to a lot of others? Or could some of the programs that the city is putting on be made more publicized, aware of in the long-term care homes? Because I know, activities, there's some great speakers that come in and talk about things, and that could be shared amongst all. It might be helpful to all.
Do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Certainly, long-term care facilities do have recreation staff, but during COVID, there was certainly opportunities where, particularly retirement homes that may not have similar resources, were able to join in many of our virtual programs. As well, we have an activity kit delivery program where individuals can get an activity kit delivered every few months, and really address isn't important. It's just in the City of Kitchener, so whether they're in long-term care or in a retirement home, we're happy to drop it off for them.
Mm-hmm. I was just saying, I don't know if the long-term care homes are aware of that. Maybe reaching out there just so they're aware. And another thing that it's always been heartwarming to me when I visit my mom is the number of people in long-term care homes that just have a wealth of wisdom, knowledge, experience, care for mentoring. There's sometimes people would like a mother, father, grandmother, grandfather relationship, and I think there's just so much wisdom and knowledge that could be, given access to if there's some sort of a program set up for that. I just would like to see that knowledge, passed on.
Yeah,
certainly it's something. Like, even online, like myself, it'd be great to talk to somebody about things sometimes, right? So.
Yeah, certainly intergenerational programs are an area that we are looking at in the future. At the moment, we have limited intergenerational programs that tend to be focused like a homeschool group that might be at a community center coming into the day program or that, but it's something we could take into consideration.
Yeah, that's great. This is great work you're doing, and thank you so much for all your advocacy and hard work.
I just really quickly, because I can't let it pass without saying it, it's the same staffing levels now as it was prior to, and they've taken on both the virtual programming and the in-person programming, and so that is why council needs to look at this, because Councillor, with all due respect, you're adding even more onto the same staff, and that's quite a lot to ask of staff.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Councillor Clancy.
Yes, thanks so much. I've appreciated seeing the work you do. It's quite a lively bunch, and I am glad to see such a broad representation of different perspectives. I'm sure it makes the process messier, but we end up further ahead. So thanks for all your good work. It was the best, hardest job to pick the Senior of the Year, because it was so wonderful and touching to see the amazing contributions that are being made in our city. I just have a quick question. I hear a lot about affordability, that many seniors are having to choose even how many meals they can eat a day in order to pay the rents, and then, of course, those that are experiencing the rent evictions, like you're saying. So yeah, just wondering what would you say needs to be done to ensure seniors aren't facing this degree of food insecurity that I think is going hidden? Like, some are quite proud, right? They don't want to speak openly about the hardships the financial hardships of being on a fixed income as prices in the grocery stores go up. But, you know, I don't know, maybe that's too broad or too difficult to speak to.
I think that's incredible. It's an incredibly difficult question, and I think that I certainly don't know the solution to it. I'm not sure that Max, any one of us, or even as a committee, would know the solution. I'm sure council doesn't know the solution. I think that becoming aware, learning about what is actually happening, because I suspect that if we don't know, we don't think about it. And so it's actually raising the level of awareness that people are in. I mean, one of the things that's in the picture but that we didn't actually speak of is that seniors, older adults, are living in the streets. They're living in the better tent city. And I think that that's just not an awareness that we have. And I think that once we become aware of these things, that we may actively engage to try to find solutions. But I don't think those are easy.
Yeah. So maybe just a conversation to continue or bring to the fore. Because I do think, though, too, that those who have their needs met don't understand the other perspectives of those who are struggling and the realities of homelessness. So I see both sides, right? Those who are living that reality, and both are in that older adult category, right? So, yeah, maybe that's something we can digest and process, and if you have ideas, let me know. Thank you. Just a concern I have, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the work that you do and for coming here today. I found the report very informative, so thank you for that. So I have a few things. You mentioned, you know, the importance of having older seniors at the table. Yeah. And I agree, this is basic, right? Basic engagement. One of the things, and this was in the context of planning, so we do neighborhood information meetings, but we do them all virtually right now. Would it make a difference to senior or to older adults to have maybe a hybrid model or more in-person meetings so that they could actually sit at the table? I mean, when you say sit at the table, are you saying figuratively, or are you saying physically being at that table?
Well, we think both, but when we talk about our older adults, they have a world where they have always met in person. You know, it's another level to meet virtually and not get that same interpersonal connection. So I think getting the best out of an older adult is to sit with them individually even, or in a small group, and to just let them talk. And I think that that's an important piece. You know, give the topic and just, you know, like Councillor Deneau said, there's so much wisdom. And, you know, to share that, the best way to do it is to talk.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That's very helpful. I guess my other question would have to do with, you know, I've heard that, I learned the other day, and I was actually quite shocked, that every night at the shelter in the former Schwaben Club, there are 15 to 20 older adults sleeping there. They refer to them as seniors, so it might not be as young as 55, but I'm not sure the age range. But so clearly there is a big problem that we've got here, right? What would you say are your biggest asks as Max, or as, you know, as a committee? And it may not have to do with housing, but
I think the closeness of working with city staff, and I hope you've even seen it right here in the last few minutes about how we know what they know and they know what we know, and continuing to strengthen that relationship, I think, is very important. I even noticed that, like I said, this is my 5th year, and I've noticed the increase in the collegiality and the effectiveness of decision-making that has been the way that we've been able to do it, even through the pandemic in the last couple of years. So I think that the closeness of working with city staff has been incredibly important. And again, that can span across all topic areas. The folks who sit behind us are fantastic, by the way. You know, to be able to work with them has been a real privilege for all of us, and we have nothing but great admiration for what they do, and so on. But we do help to bring some of that lived experience. You know, as I mentioned earlier, my mom's 91, and I think about her with some of the decisions. She's capable of living on her own, but I know that that's not going to be reality. So the change is important to deal with as well. So dealing with constant change. Once a decision has been made, sometimes it only sticks for a little while, and then we have to make changes to those decisions. I don't know, Diane, if you have anything else you want to add to that.
No, because I think being at the table,
Yeah,
that's our big ask.
Yeah.
Right. Is that we're there for whatever is happening, that we're there at the beginning, that there's input from Max.
Yeah.
Right.
And if I can give you just a quick example, with the snow sidewalk clearing, there was a lot of talk about, you know, and surveys and so on, and the report came to Max pretty much after it was done, and the previous chair tried to come back and write a letter and so on about seniors that would be more isolated because of the lack of snow shoveling. And it was just kind of behind, you know, it was advocating to something that seemed to be already completed, whereas if maybe the voice would have been at the table during the discussions, it might have come out different. So I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Yeah.
You know we're in the process of doing a new strategic plan in the city, and I assume you've been consulted, and I think it is very important, as you mentioned, that all of these decisions be done taking into account a senior and age-friendly lens. Finally, my question is, and this might be more for staff, if you could just sort of give us a summary of how Max interconnects with GRAC and the Multicultural Centre and the region who provides many of the services. So I just wonder if there's interconnections there.
Hi, everybody. Through the chair, you've got the whole staff team here today. Sorry. I was moving. Do you mind, Councillor, please repeating the question, just so I can...
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could give us sort of an overview of how Max interacts with GRAC and the region, who provides many of the needed services, the Multicultural Centre, and with GRAC. Maybe I said GRAC already. Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I can answer it a few ways for you. So we're fortunate to be a member, a strategic partner at the Ontario Health Team. And at that team, we have a number of regional partners that are around that table, including the region, folks working in long-term care. And as a city, we're able to think strategically, speak strategically about grants that are coming and how money's spent at a regional level. So at that point, we're able to bring the feedback that we get from Max forward and some of the changes that we're making with the municipality. As far as GRAC, we're fortunate that Max and GRAC and Kitchener Youth Action Council are all within our own team. So staff are able to easily coordinate, share agenda items, meet sort of water cooler talks and talk about agendas. So that happens pretty organically within the team. And what we've learned, we've even had joint meetings, especially around the sidewalk clearance issue with Max and GRAC to jointly speak about items that, while they might cross over, it's really important that we hear both perspectives. So that's happening. As far as the KW Multicultural Centre, I know that at one point we had somebody on the committee, but I could be wrong there, so I'll have Max correct me. But a lot of that has fallen with staff to make sure that we're collaborating and connecting with cultural groups, marginal organizations that are representing New Canadians and refugees. So staff have taken a lead on that, but not without Max saying, hey, this is a gap. We're missing this person. Have you tried? So we haven't done anything in isolation without the members of Max supporting us in that.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thanks for all the work you're doing.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Dan and Kathy for your work and the presentation. I really appreciate the action plan. The content and the layout and everything is great. I just wanted to touch on two things. I think Councillor Chapman touched on it a little bit, but the notion at the end of the presentation about having your input, Max having input on things before as opposed to finding out about them after the fact. You already listed sidewalk snow clearing as an example. If any other examples come to mind, please share. But if you do see them coming up in the media or something or outputs and you say, hey, Max really should have had a say on this beforehand, let the staff know, because it is common practice some of our committees, like whether it's environmental committee about environmental things or economic development about economic development things, for staff to float reports that are coming to council through those committees before it even gets to us. So if you see those things sort of anecdotally, please reach out to staff.
For sure.
The other thing I wanted to mention, just sort of plug it a bit, is for the housing piece. Now, this isn't going to help so much the supportive, the lower income folks, but one area I think gets overlooked a bit, and I think we sell it short, is the tiny home program in backyards. And I think part of the pushback, at least, speaking to my mother about it, is there's the perception that it's like a shed-sized thing, and there's a whole lot of space, etc. But really, if you look into it, like in many cases, you can go up to 700 or 800 square feet. That doesn't even count a basement, and oftentimes this could be a situation where they're they're basically in their children's backyard. So anything you can do to help promote that as an opportunity, especially for people that are overhoused now and are looking to downsize, anything we can do to sort of push that word out there. But thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Davey. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Councillor Davies' point, the little homes in the backyard, that's my aspiration when I get to be 80 and do my son's backyard. So if you're out there listening. Anyways, thank you so much for everything that you have done. This report is amazing. There's lots of information here. The one question I have is with mobility and communication to elderly residents that live in home. When you're living in a nursing home or a retirement home, you have activities there already. If you're living alone at home, the activities aren't there, and as you know, a lot of elderly people lose their license. The mobility is limited. I see in the report you had 2,100 social support calls replaced, right? So there's a lot more seniors in this region than that, in this city than that. How do you get the message out to them? Is it just social media, or how do you? What method of communication do you use to reach all seniors?
Well, I'll let you answer. I'll just very quickly, in my own personal case, is advertising to the children of the older adults, because oftentimes we're connected to the social media, we're connected to everything that's out there in terms of just being aware of information. And then with hey, do you have an older adult in your life who might be interested in this? And I know in my particular case, that's a lot of times how my mom gets to know things, is I find out. And then, because I think that we want to direct it always to the audience, but sometimes the broadening of the audience is helpful because we can pass information along. And I know you have some ideas.
I have really, really strong feelings about using social media when we're targeting older adults who don't have access to or the skills or whatever. And I know that it's much cheaper for the city to do that and to rely on a virtual presence. But in fact, older adults are the people who read the newspaper, for example. It's certainly not the younger generation. And in Kathy's mother's building, she finds out information because I take it and I post it in the mail room. And if we have printed information that we can take to places where we know there are senior adults, like retirement homes, like long-term care facilities, and we have an actual piece of paper, and the owners, the landlords, whoever are agreeable, and most of them are amenable to this kind of thing, making that available to people. They see it and they think, oh yes, well, that's speaking to me. But we can't rely on any one kind of communication. It has to be a broad spectrum.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think I have a neighbor who's 90 now and has lost her license, and so she relies on myself and my sister to help her around because she has no family that lives in the city. This woman reads 3 newspapers a day. I could tell her that this is going on at this place. She's very independent still in her mind, of course, right? And pushing back on getting old, aren't we all? So to be able to read the newspaper, and this just isn't a plug for the newspaper, it's a reality that we've got a whole sector of society, a large sector of society still, to your point, 90s, 80s and 90s, who still read the paper. And I think that that's a piece that we really can't forget. And it would be worth spending a little extra dollars to make sure we reach that group, because I think a lot of them aren't on the computer like we think we all are. Thank you, and thanks again for all your work.
We were adamant that this be in paper as well as online, because an older adult wants to sit and drink their tea and have a flip through and come back to it later, and and have that there. So having print copies is still really important to that age demographic.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So those are all the questions that we have. Thank you again on behalf of council for the great work that the committee did, and for all of the wonderful support from our staff team as well.
Great. Thank
Thanks
you
so
very much for your time.
A couple questions for staff yet. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For staff, so it's my understanding that one of the goals was for the city to deliver programs and services in a way that helps older adults live well, or age in place. So can you tell us what we're doing moving forward to help achieve that goal, which is really important?
Sure. Through the chair, thank you for the question. I might remind council that through the operating budget process last year, you approved additional operating funding for us to really achieve this goal. So traditionally, we had been offering programs out of 3 main community centers. Downtown Community Center, Bright Up, and Rockway. And with that funding, what we've done is we've taken programs to neighborhoods. Instead of having folks to travel, take bus, take transit, we're now push those programs out to neighborhoods so that they're easily accessible, that people can attend a program where they live, they can walk, roll, or even attend virtually. So that has been a big push for us. And, we're really happy to say we're out at another 6 community centers. And people talked about the Try Us, which is Ms. Doherty Mathers talked a little bit about that. And so you'll see now that we've been able to go to areas like Chandler, like where maybe there might be more marginalized or more barriers to accessing programs and services. So we're excited about that. Also, what we learned through COVID that was addressed, but I think that is really important to highlight, is that the most isolated folks that are living in our community need a different approach to programming. And so while the social support calls, the tech lending library, the activity kits, telephone calls, our dementia golf friendly program are very important for us. We can't look at programming in one homogeneous way anymore. We have to really look at it differently. And we saw through our strat plan, we need to focus on mental health and well-being, and that's for older adults as well. So those are some of the things we're doing. The other strategic priority for us will be really working closely with cultural groups, with New Canadians, with organizations. We did a little bit of a engagement where we were out in community centers talking to folks that were just attending food distribution, that were cultural groups meeting to figure out and think about and talk about what are the programs that folks want to see. So you'll see more of that as we get into past fall. Yeah.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, I had a similar question to Councillor Deneau. Ms. Palabowski, there's a lot of positive feedback that we received. I just wanted to take note of that. That's very much appreciated. And I think that's really, that's great that the advisory committee sees that, a collaborative relationship that's been established. And I think that in itself speaks tremendous volumes. When there's trust across the aisle, I think positive conversations can take place, and I can't say the same for all our committees, but the fact that it's felt from this, it's definitely appreciated, and hopefully CLT acknowledges the great work that the community services staff are doing to maintain that level of trust amongst our aging community, and especially the advisory committee. The next part of the question would be more so an aspect of programming. And we're looking at the upcoming budget as well, where I know that in the previous budget we did allocate additional resources for more flexible planning of programming for our seniors. From that trial, how faster can we adopt that amongst more of the community centers? Where is there a role that our staff can play a more active role in the creation of these programs, where we don't have to necessarily run them, but we can organize them? And there's a lot of outside providers that can use the active space that's within our community centers to provide that programming to older seniors.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I feel, we could offer a million programs, but if it's not the right program at the right time, at the right location, it's not, it's not a good use sort of our resources. We need to be mindful. For example, we're looking at now, hiring people with lived experience in Chandler, for example. It was a knitting group. So looking at who has been the leader in that group, how do we hire that person as an instructor to lead that group within Chandler? So it's going to look different, I think, depending on the neighborhood, depending on the community and the group that we're working with. And we really want to focus on co-designing older adult programs with Max and with folks that are using the programs. What can we do to continue this, or how fast, sorry, is the question, I think. But, I think we've got a good model. I think we've got a good base. We still have work to do, but we've been able to develop some additional trust with some of our community organizations that I think that, this is not insurmountable. I believe in the next year we'll be able to really see a difference in who's attending our programs. I will say, this book that Max led really helped, because we've been asked and challenged to produce a hard copy, older adult programming across the city. And I think, how we communicate, how we engage will also help us engage and have increased participation from diverse folks.
So you segued perfectly in my other question I wanted to ask, as to how do we get that booklet in the hands of, across the board of our city. Like we have Active Kitchener that gets distributed 60,000 plus households. Is there an avenue where future iterations of Active Kitchener, some of the documentation, that takes feedback, that presents different ideas, that's outlined in that booklet, that can be included in Active Kitchener?
What will be important to note is we have a strategic sort of review of Active Kitchener coming. I believe it's early 2024. So staff will start to look at sort of the purpose and function and how it supports sort of the direction and engagement input we're getting from folks that use it. Communication, and Ms. Robb can probably support me on this, is the challenge, right? Whatever group we're talking to, how do we get it to the right people? And what we've learned, especially with our leisure access, is really working with our community partners, our champions and our leaders in neighborhoods on sharing the information, going to current participants. But the people that are not coming is really the group that we're targeting and wanting to be knowledgeable about our services.
Good, I appreciate that, and of course we heard the positive aspects of their impressions of our staff, but we also have to be reflective on some of the, I wouldn't say critical aspects of, but their wanting of inclusion to be early stages of when there's new new strategic plans that are being looked at, that they be in the early stages of that conversation. Hopefully we take that into all considerations as well. Thank you.
Mr. May, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Singh for acknowledging staff. If I've learned one thing over the years of working with this team, it's that I just need to stay out of the way and let them do their work, and they do amazing things. So it's great to hear the positive feedback from Council and from the volunteers. I did want to remind Council that part of the new strategic plan that's been approved includes a review of all city direct programming, which would include older adult programming. And so that's going to be an opportunity to look at staffing levels, look at how we're delivering them, how we can get out quicker to community centers. So I think in the coming year, Council will be engaged in that dialogue.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. May, and thank you once again to our staff and our delegation from Max on a lot of great work, and a lot of great work to be done yet in the future. Okay, we'll move on then to delegations, and I'd like to remind all delegations of some guidelines for participation. If you conduct yourself in any of the following manners, it will result in an immediate removal from the meeting: interrupting mayor or councillor, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about the mayor or councillor, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there is no questions from Council. This is Council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. Item 6.1 we're going to hold because the delegation isn't here yet, but we understand they might be coming. Item 6.2 has been withdrawn for this meeting, so we'll move on to item 6.3. And I'd like to invite up Mr. Brock Linkletter from Dryden, Smith and Head with respect to the zoning application. Is Mr. Linkletter here? Is he here virtually? Oh, okay. Only if there are any questions. If not, Councillor Singh just stepped out. So Councillor Chapman is moving the recommendation for the zoning bylaw recommendation that's in front of us, unless anyone has any questions of the delegation. If not, it's been moved by Councillor Chapman, seconded by Councillor O'Dooney. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move on then to item 6.4, the speed limit review. There was an addendum report that staff have included in the agenda on this matter, and we have one delegation, Ms. Melissa Bowman. Welcome, Ms. Bowman.
Good afternoon, Council. Earlier this year, we sold our vehicle, allowing us to be a car-free household. Part of the reason we have been able to make that shift is due to recent city policies such as Vision Zero, Complete Streets, and the DTK cycling grid, along with regional improvements to transit. These policies work together to create safer and more accessible streets. I'm thankful that Kitchener Council has committed to these policies over the last number of years. However, some recent council discussions and decisions have me concerned, such as the Lancaster Ramps decision, as well as discussions around speed limits. I'm worried that we are losing sight of some of the goals in these policies that I mentioned, so I want to remind us of how we got here. Just over 4 years ago, Council passed a motion that the neighbourhood speed limit review be approved as phase 1 of an initiative to create safer, slower streets. That same year, the city was looking to move away from car-centered designs to a complete streets approach that makes roads safer and easier for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit. Oh, where'd my slides go? Okay. All right. I saw them. See, this is why I don't usually use slides, because it's so uncertain whether it will work or not. Can we get it on the second one? So, yes, as I was saying, that same year, the city was looking to move away from car-centered designs to a complete streets approach that makes roads safer and easier for pedestrians, cyclists, and transit. So instead of designing streets primarily to ensure the smooth, swift flow of cars, streets would be designed to improve the safety of all users. And complete streets focus on sustainability with wider boulevards so street trees can thrive, and ideas for greener street design, which supports Council's 2019 declaration of a climate emergency. At that time, Councillor Ioannidis said support of his motion is important as it signals that we are taking climate change seriously. In March 2020, Council directed staff to develop a Vision Zero strategy with the goal to improve street safety for all road users, regardless of age, ability, or mode of transportation. In September 2021, Council approved that the speed limit be reduced to 40 kilometres per hour and that school zones be further reduced to 30 kilometres. Councillor Schneider shared these policies updates on his website, where he noted that speeding in residential neighbourhoods is one of the most common concerns raised by residents to transportation staff and Council. He stated that the lowering of speeds is important for safety and that we can play a significant role by observing the speed limit, especially in and around school zones. In responses to the motion passing, the Mayor said that these speed limit reductions are an important step in improving roadway safety for all ages and types of transportation, and it sets an ambitious goal as we work towards Vision Zero. And the data supports this. Speeding is the top safety issue in school zones. The majority of students use active transportation to commute to school. The pilot demonstrated a 12% reduction in the average speed in school zones. Cities around the world are finding innovative ways to improve road safety, such as school streets in Paris. At committee, I heard some councillors say that we must seek balance on our roads. However, it's important to note that for far too long, the scales have been tipped heavily in favor of vehicles. The vast majority of collisions that involve vulnerable road users result in injuries or fatalities. I also heard support for consistency, which I agree is important. However, we already align with Waterloo and Cambridge, so let's urge the region to bring their guidelines to match the 3 municipalities. In regards to Bingham and Centre Drive, staff note that vehicles are currently not complying with the posted speed limit. Increasing the limit could further increase the speeds of vehicles. They also highlight upcoming safety enhancements for this road, such as pedestrian islands. Staff remind us, though, that higher posted speed limits could undermine the effectiveness of such measures, compromising the safety of vulnerable street users. I agree with staff's conclusion that an increased speed limit should only be considered when the on-road bike lanes are upgraded to separated cycling facilities. My hope is for Council to support staff's recommendation to maintain current speed limits. However, if Council decides in favour of an increased speed limit, at a bare minimum, I'd hope for separated cycling infrastructure before the speed limit is changed and without impacting other planned projects, a review to implement a sidewalk on the south side of the road, and a pilot for the speed limit increase. We seem to love pilot projects on things we know increase road safety, such as reduced speed limits. We should expect the same or more when considering a speed limit increase. I feel fortunate to live in a city which values safer, complete streets through these and other policies. It has allowed my household the freedom to shift to car-free living. I believe that increasing speeds in school zones or elsewhere doesn't align with the policies that Council has endorsed. I therefore urge Council to follow staff's recommendation to maintain current speed limits. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Bowman, for coming in, and there don't appear to be any questions.
Okay, thanks.
We'll deal with this item when we get to the Development Services report, but I will just note that there is an addendum staff recommendation that's on the agenda as well. We'll now move into reports of the committees, and, sorry? Okay, we'll go back now and we'll deal with item 6.1a. Ms. Caitlin Leanders, who's here for Kitchener's Responsible Dog Ownership Bylaw.
Good afternoon.
Welcome, Ms. Leander.
Leanders, yes. So I apologize in advance. I have brain damage and a neurological condition, so please bear with me as I try to get all my words together. My name is Caitlin Leandris. I am a disabled and chronically ill individual living in Kitchener. I have come to you today requesting an exemption to the leash laws in our city for my service dog. For clarity, I am not asking to have my service dog off-leash all the time. I am asking for permission to unleash them in certain situations as an accommodation to my disabilities and for the quality of my life. I have 2 dogs right now. They are highly trained. They are expected to respond to verbal commands and remain with me at all times. They do not engage with other people or animals unless specifically released to do so. I have a 1-year-old dog that is currently in training, and I have a semi-retired senior that is still semi-working he does still help to mitigate some of my disabilities. Life for me is extremely difficult. Unlike my fellow Kitchener residents, I am unable to have the quality of life that most people enjoy every day. Leaving my home alone and having any sort of independence was once impossible for me until my medical team and I decided to try utilizing a service animal to help mitigate my disabilities and provide medical response for my conditions. Over a decade ago, I brought home a puppy and I raised and trained him to be my service animal. This was life-changing for me, and he gave me back independence that I hadn't had at any point in my life up until that moment. The same dog has been my working partner for 10 years before a spinal injury forced me to medically retire him. Although he is retired, as I said, he will always be my service animal, still mitigates many of my symptoms for me just by being with me every single day. I now have my year-old service dog in training. He was specially bred, just like my first service dog, from the same working dog breeder to be my partner. His foundational obedience is complete, and I have moved on to his advanced obedience and his task training. The first conflict I experience in regard to the leash laws involves allowing my dogs to potty in appropriate spaces off leash. This could be a patch of grass near a grocery store, my backyard, which doesn't have a fence, unfortunately, or a patch of grass near another establishment I need to visit. Whether I'm physically fatigued, experiencing a neurological episode, or having a lot of pain, I believe that I shouldn't be penalized for allowing my service dog to be able to urinate off leash near me while I maintain verbal control and can help prevent aggravation of my symptoms by walking back and forth quite a bit. The next conflict involves just training in general. In order to achieve advanced training, to give a toy reward for completing a command successfully, and teach certain tasks like commands at a distance, holding a down position at a distance, I need to be able to train off leash or with a dropped leash to achieve and maintain this level of training. I believe it is required for all service dogs. There's a lot of things that they need to do that I'm sure you all know is above and beyond what most pet dogs have to show in public. There are many instances, especially during my medical appointments, that my dog needs to hold a downstay off to the side while I undergo examination or treatment. There are times when I have to leave him in a downstay when I need to go off to get an x-ray, and my now semi-retired service dog has been able to achieve all of those things, which is wonderful. To get that level of training, I do need to have the opportunity to train them at a distance. Lastly, the exercise is also a conflict I run into. Exercise is extremely important for a service animal to help maintain their physical fitness, their wellness, to keep them in shape to work. Appropriate fitness allows them to execute tasks and work comfortably, especially as they age. Because of my disabilities and my fixed income on ODSP, I am unable to walk my dogs at length every day or pay someone to exercise them. I need to utilize other methods to exercise them that don't aggravate my symptoms or put my health at risk. On most days, it is easy to find an empty sports field or space at a park where I can exercise my dogs without bothering or interfering with anyone. This is safe and effective. It allows me to maintain the health and wellness of my service dog. I can sit and stand comfortably with a cane and exercise using verbal control only. Dog parks are not a safe option for service animals. The risk of attacks and injuries from other dogs, exposure to disease and parasites, and learning bad social behaviors from poorly behaved dogs is far too high for a service animal who is extremely difficult to replace and costs a ton of money time and money to train. Attacks at dog parks, fights, other social distress can set a dog back in training or even force it to a retirement, can cause it to be aggressive or reactive from bullying or attacks, so it's a huge risk, and it's one that most service dog handlers do not want to take with their dogs. Hiring a dog walker is not feasible. I don't have the budget. It also comes with its own risks and forces me to separate from my service animals. Can also set back its training because it's a stranger and I don't know how they train or how they work. And the last issue is has to do with my own quality of life outside my house. Being tethered or having to constantly hold a leash when I'm trying to get some recreational enjoyment feels a bit unfair and frustrating. Although I often have my dog attached to me, sometimes it makes sense to unclip the leash for a short period of time. This is something as simple as sitting at the park to enjoy some fresh air. I don't want to be penalized for not holding the leash. And having that exemption would help give me more of a quality of life. It will help me train my service dogs, exercise them safely, so that I can also enjoy the few days that I do get to go out. And the last thing I want to mention is that I go far out of my way to ensure my dogs are safe and highly trained. I've earned the Canadian Kennel Club's Canine Good Neighbor certificate. I have another temperament test certificate. I've earned ribbons in obedience competitions. My dogs are safe, they are trained, and they pose no threat to society. And that about sums up my reasons for the request.
Okay, is that the end of your presentation, Ms. Anders?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There don't appear to be any questions, so thank you for that. I'm wondering if we can just ask staff to provide any clarification on this issue. Is there, in response to Ms. Leander's?
Through the chair, so we do have a leash bylaw that is required under the responsible dog ownership bylaw, and under that bylaw there is no exemption for any sort of off-leash in our parks or in our sports fields. So what I can say is this is something that we receive complaints about. We have a balance between residents that want to have their dogs off-leash in parks as well as residents that use the parks and sports fields for, other reasons, who may have fear of dogs. So therefore, we often see complaints come into our office when people are running their dogs off leash for several reasons, fear being one of them, but another reason being that often dogs aren't picked up after. And I know Ms. Leanders has outlined that that wouldn't be the concern with hers, but I think from our perspective, I don't know of any other opportunities that we would have for her other than allowing the dogs to either be, I think we've provided all of the reasons that she has said she can't utilize, including having somebody else walk her dogs. But at this point, from a city perspective and Humane Society perspective, we don't feel that it would be appropriate to support that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Michaud, you have a question?
Thank you. Are there any other communities that have this sort of opportunity available for people with disabilities that you know of?
I'm not aware of any other municipality that allows dogs off leash regarding disabilities. I know the city of Guelph, I have spoken with them. They do allow people to use their parks if they're not being used, and then so for example, if the park's not being used and you come, you can run your dog off leash. If somebody else comes into the park, you have to immediately leash your dog, or if it's being used as a sports field, then you can't utilize it. In speaking with Guelph, they said they've had a lot of issues with that. They're having issues with people not picking up after their dogs, as well as arguments ensuing when somebody else comes along and then, as to who was there first and whether the initial person needs to leash. So it has been a little bit of a problem for them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now move on then to the reports of the committees. And Councillor Chapman, if you can bring forward Heritage Kitchener, please.
Okay, the report of Heritage Kitchener dated August 1st, 2023, listed as item 7.1a on the agenda, this date be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder, Councillor Chapman?
Councillor Michaud.
Councillor Michaud, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. We'll move on to Finance and Corporate Services. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Bill Ioannidis that the 9 items from Finance and Corporate Services Committee be adopted. I would just point out a few of them. One's the advancement of our strategic plan, which is very exciting. Another is the collaboration with the UW Innovation Arena for our small business center going forward. And finally, an adjustment of the natural gas rates, which is anticipated to save the average Kitchener resident $50 to $60 roughly per year. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. So that's been moved and seconded. Any questions? There being none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Moving forward. Planning and strategic initiatives. Before we do that, I just want to after a year leave of absence. Want to welcome back our Director of Planning, Rosa Bustamante. Great to have you back, and hoping your two little ones are doing absolutely wonderful, and look forward to doing lots of great things together over the next while. Welcome back. And with that, I'll turn it over to Councillor Singh to bring forward the balance of the report. Go ahead, Councillor Singh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and the items in the report as listed for Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee arising from August 14th as listed in the agenda, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Chapman.
Okay, and you're moving it with the addendum staff recommendation?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. With that, we'll move into the into unfinished business, and we have the Lived Expertise Working Group first year review, and there was an addendum report. Mr. Reedman, is there anything you want to add on that one, or since Mr. Stevenson's not here?
Yes, through the mayor. So we've been having very good conversations with the Social Development Center, and so we just need a little bit more time to come back. And so we think we'll get to a positive outcome where we've articulated a strong plan for year 2. But as said, just working with people with lived expertise sometimes takes a little bit more time, and so we want to make sure we get this right so that council can be in a place to continue to move forward with that program for the next year.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to check to make sure the actual sunset or ending date isn't changing as a resulting of these actions. Is that correct?
Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, that is correct. And so the reason why it's back in front of council today is we are paying them month to month, and so we had authorization to pay them until the end of August. So we want to make sure we can pay them for their work in September and continue to move forward once council makes a decision on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you. So essentially, do you still need authorization from council to carry on month to month, or?
Mr. Reedman?
So I'll just stay acute in if there's more questions, but through the mayor, so no, we think when we report back in September, we should be able to continue with a full plan for the rest of the year with an articulated agreement between the two parties.
Okay, that's what I assumed, and that's great. Just as a quick comment, Mr. Mayor, again, I had asked for this essentially to come back, and I'm hopeful that the conversations are moving forward in a fruitful manner, and that was really the purpose of this, to give avenue of staff to have additional dialogue, Social Planning Council, and more importantly, to create that a better understanding amongst what we are hoping to get from the benefit of that lived experience from that group, not to create any sense of contention with them. It's essentially the funding that's being put forward is is really serving the best benefit to them, and also as a return back to this council as advocacy. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Do I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Singh, seconder. Councillor Chapman. Thank you. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Any new business? There being none, we'll move on to, there's one item of business under mayoral business and updates, and that's a notice that we received about an all-council meeting involving the region of Waterloo and area municipalities for an education session, and that's on September 15th at 1 o'clock. And people can either attend in person or electronically. Does somebody want to move that motion? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Davey.
Yes, sir. Has the intention of the education session been made public?
It's in your calendars.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, because typically there's some sort of indication of what the session is. I'm just wondering if that's.
Yeah, so it's part of our it's part of the training with respect to Indigenous issues.
Okay, thank you.
With that, so it's been moved and seconded. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Councillor Michaud, your motion on gender-based violence. Can you click your mic? Nope. There we go.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to bring the following motion forward. Whereas in 2022, it was estimated that one woman or girl is killed every 48 hours in Canada, primarily by men. And whereas the Renfrew County issued 86 recommendations to the province of Ontario aimed at combating increasing levels of intimate partner violence in light of an inquest into the deaths of 3 local women at the hands of a man with a long history of stalking and domestic violence convictions. And whereas the #1 recommendation of the inquest was for the province of Ontario to declare intimate partner violence an epidemic, and whereas 30 municipalities across Ontario have declared intimate partner violence an epidemic, and whereas in March 2019, Ontario's Tri-Cities of Kitchener, Waterloo, and Cambridge ranked as the least safe and least healthy place for women among the 26 largest metropolitan areas in Canada. And whereas 1/4 of all criminal charges laid in Waterloo Region in 2022 were related to intimate partner violence. And whereas frontline service organizations in Waterloo Region have raised concerns about increased demand for sexual assault support services while operational funding remains stagnant. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Kitchener declare gender-based violence and intimate partner violence an epidemic. Therefore, be it further resolved that this resolution be circulated to the Honourable Marcy Ian, Minister of Women and Gender Equality and Youth, in support of the letter brought forward by Member of Parliament for the riding of Kitchener Centre, Mike Morris, outlining an urgent need for operational funding for frontline service organizations in Waterloo Region.
Do I have a seconder for that, Councillor Michaud? Seconded by Councillor Clancy. Okay. Any discussion? Councillor Clancy, go ahead.
I just want to thank you as a social worker. During COVID, I saw record numbers of women entering the shelter system, and it was the most difficult type of situation when people are living contained like that during the hardest times of their life, and the pressure cooker families were under that kind of, I think, shed light on a lot of the gaps that exist. And the demand for services is through the roof, and we see through record levels of pornography use and increased aggression and misogyny in pornography that choking is now a social norm, and now our hospitals are trying to respond to that. So I think the data you raise is so important to highlight because it's so hidden, and so I just am grateful. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There being no further comments. Go ahead, Councillor Clancy.
I just wondered if, I know we're sharing it with Honourable Marcy Ian, I don't know if I said it right, but I just wonder if we could share it more widely. You know, I know it's a common motion, but I think advocacy, this is about advocacy, right? And there's so many levels of government that I think have a role to play. That's my only wish.
Councillor Michaud, it's your motion.
I thought it's already been shared quite a bit through. Where else were you?
Oh, just like provincial governments, like this impacts healthcare spending, it impacts our education systems, like what more could we do in our school systems to prepare both all of our young people to have better, healthier relationships, you know, like, because I mean, the operational funding is key. Like, of course we want to support people who've been impacted by this, but I find that the focus is often on reacting versus being proactive when it comes to young people and how we get ahead of some of the trends. I don't know if...
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I guess that wasn't part of my motion, but if you wanted to bring another motion forward or something, I guess, I don't know. This was just basically the way it was written, I wanted it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So you want leaving it the way it is then? Okay. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question of staff. By us declaring gender-based violence and intimate partner violence an epidemic, does this add any more responsibilities to us? Just want to know what the impacts of declaring this an epidemic would make for us.
Who wants to respond? Sorry, someone responding, or
I know, tough question.
Mr. Chapman?
Through the chair. So I don't know if that's something that Councillor Michaud engaged with staff on and has some specific insight on. All I can offer is that I know that the issue came up previously in declaring a climate emergency when one of the criticisms of that approach was that, you know, it necessitated a level of response that perhaps did not follow the declaration of an emergency. All I can offer is that I have heard some feedback on this motion that an epidemic is a public health term that implies a public health response, and that if that action does not follow this declaration, some have questioned the use of that term. And so I simply offer that as you know, one of the reflections that's been offered on the use of the term. But I think you're very much in the place as you were on declaring a climate emergency. Whether or not you want to make politically that sort of a statement, then it's certainly within your prerogative to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Singh?
Yes. Just very quickly, more so as a comment, you know, as a health emergency, you know, that would be in the purview or responsibility of the region, and again for social services as well. As a lower tier municipality, many things are the outside the purview of what this council can really, you know, affect some change on. But that's not to say that it's not our responsibility to access our privilege around this table, to point out serious issues and challenges in our communities, in our society, as what Councillor Michaud's motion is endeavoring to do. So I wanted to thank her on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor O'Dooney?
Thank you very much. I want to say a big thank you for bringing up this motion. I think a few weeks ago I was reading an article that talked about I don't remember what the number is, the thousands of violent reports that the police, Waterloo Regional Police Service, are getting on a regular basis in reference to this. So it was disturbing for me when I read it, like, whoa, what is going on and how do we get here type thing. I will probably reach out to staff later on, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but a question that I would love to find out is what can we do on our end to, whatever little that we can start doing from our side to maybe start even trying to address this issue. But it's not a question that anyone has to answer now. It's probably an email just to get a response later on so we can all start brainstorming and thinking about it, but fully support this. This is awesome.
Okay, great, and thank you for raising that, Councillor O'Dooney. Perhaps one of the things that staff can do is, you know, I know that from time to time they become aware of these things, particularly in our customer interactions at places like our community centers and so on. Staff would refer people to appropriate support agencies and so on. So perhaps staff can do a brief email to council, at least to initially answer your question with some of just what our process is when we become aware of these things in our community centers and so on. Okay, so the motion has been moved and seconded. I will just note, thanks Councillor Michaud for bringing it forward. It's also being dealt with at Regional Council on Wednesday evening. So with that, all those in favour? Opposed? And I'll note that that is carried unanimously. Any questions and answers? There being none, we'll move on to the bylaws. The first and second reading of the bylaws. Madam Clerk, are there any additional bylaws?
I just wanted to raise to your attention, there's a new heading on the agenda just to ensure that we can address them through strong mayor provisions as well, that the bylaws listed under 11.2 are the late starters for your agenda this date. They include Chapter 70 as holding provisions, as well as Queens Boulevard. There will be a third reading of the bylaws specifically for Cotton Grass after Committee of the Whole. It will be read first and second during Committee of the Whole.
Okay, great, thank you. Somebody want to move the bylaws? Seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Sorry, moved by Councillor Ioannidis, seconded by Councillor Schneider. Any discussion? All those in favour? Opposed? That's carried. Before we go into Committee of the Whole, I just want to ask that 12.1.c be actually dealt with separately, and it's not really, I'm not convinced it's a conflict, but just to be in the interest of being cautious, I'll declare a conflict as my residence is close to the Franklin Street Bridge. So you'll have to deal with that one separately, Councillor O'Dooney, and I will turn it over to you. Can you turn your mic on? There we go. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Barry. Can I get a mover for all administrative reports? Well, for 12.1A and 12.1B. Okay, we have a question.
Just very quickly for 12.1A, I'm asking obvious, just more of an acknowledgement. Have we looked at potentially available funding as a retrofit? The fact that the glass panels have to come off, again, there could be an energy aspect of that that required work. Have you seeked out any funding? Or would we be eligible?
Dan Chapman?
Through the mayor, I appreciate the question, Councillor Singh. These are actually, it's a railing system, so it's not a building component. So if you think about the area on the exterior of the daycare on the 3rd floor, it's a structural railing that basically prevents children from falling
on
off the
that
3rd
side,
floor.
okay.
That's
Not the glass.
Not on the tower itself, no.
Oh, okay. I thought that was part of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, so I see that the money is being transferred from the Bright Up Center HVAC system. Is that a problem? Like, how's that going to play out?
Dan Chapman?
A portion of the money, 175,000, right?
Through the chair, as noted in the report, that project is complete at Bright Up Center, and so those funds are surplus to that capital account, and so within the State of Good Repair operating program, FM is looking to make that transfer at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, Councillor Davey.
Yeah, actually mine are on the 2 information items. I don't know when you wanted, if you want to handle that after the vote. Just I wanted to get it out there before you resolve committee of the whole.
I didn't hear what you said. Can you say that again?
Oh, sorry. I have questions on the 2 information items.
Okay.
So we can deal with those, I guess, after
When we get to it.
Thanks, yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Any further questions? Okay, great. Can I get a mover for this? All right, Councillor Deneau, can I get a seconder? Okay, I don't need a seconder? Okay, I don't need a seconder. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. Okay, should we go to item 12.1C now? Okay, can I get a mover for this one? Item 12.1C. Okay, Councillor Singh, thank you very much. Do we have any questions in reference to this? Okay, we have no questions at all. Can I get a mover? Are we just going to vote for it? Oh, I already voted? You already moved it. So I just say all those in favor? All those in favor? Okay, opposed? The motion is carried.
With the noted conflict.
With a noted conflict. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, there are 2 items on the agenda for your information. Please, whenever you get a chance, go ahead and read that. You have a question for that? Go ahead,
yeah,
Councillor Davey.
Yeah, a couple. Actually,
point of order. Just because it's an information item, you have to ask that we bump it out as information for questions. So you need a motion for that, Councillor.
So I'll move that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davey.
Take the vote.
We have to vote for that as well? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? All right, go right ahead, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, if I could. First, I think in order the summary of the tenders. I've noticed, I think every single tender came in under budget. The total is significant. I'm just wondering if staff wanted to comment on whether they think this is reflective of the times, or if they will be tightened up, I guess, in the coming years.
Anyone want to address that? Okay, Mr. Lonenbach.
So through the chair, certainly I think we've seen this year that we're getting some favorable pricing and some competitive bids, and I think that's translating into what you're seeing in the summary reports. You know, certainly getting out early in the year has helped. I know this is the April to June, but we saw similar sort of results in the first half of the year for the major projects, and so I think that's something that we want to continue with where possible. We know that capital costs and materials, we continue to see escalation in that area, and so, we're trying to adjust budgets as we did in the past, and I think that will help to address some of the pressures, but certainly that's one area where we do see in the future still making sure that we have enough budget to cover off what that cost escalation might look like. But certainly for this year, it's been very positive.
Excellent. And on the follow-up report for the variance report, we're projecting a $1.3 million surplus, which is great news. I'm wondering if, I'm just trying to remember anecdotally, I know COVID threw a bit of a wrench into it, but how many years in a row City Kitchener's posted tax-supported surpluses?
So through the chair, since 2015, we've had surpluses that we've recorded every year, with the exception of the pandemic year. So in 2020 and 2021, we had a deficit, but that was fully covered from Safe Restart funding that we received from the federal government. And back in 2022, last year, we did have a surplus as well. So we have seen, obviously, positive results for quite some time in terms of our financial performance.
Okay, if I could make a brief comment, Mr. Chair.
You go right ahead.
Yeah, so I wanted to, the reason I ask these questions is because they're not discussion items, but I think it's really important to draw some attention to them. Surpluses since 2015. I know perfect budgeting means you don't ever have a surplus or a deficit, but if you're going to have one, you want to have a surplus, and it means that we're budgeting well. And we often hear about our tenders. Whenever we get a sideways tender on a big item, it's the front cover of the local newspapers, etc. Here, we're something like $5 million under budget across these tenders. And these things don't happen by mistake. It happens because of strong financial management, and we have our city staff to thank for that. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Davey. Any further comments? Okay, great. All right, to the clerk, are there any items rising from caucus?
There are 2 items rising from caucus, one from an August 14th meeting and one from the meeting earlier this date. Marilyn will share them on the screen for you.
Okay. Do I need to read it out, or that's for people's just information? Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Let's move over to the second item, 12.1D. Okay, can I get a mover for this item? Thank you, Councillor Schneider. I forgot your name there for a quick second. All in favor? Opposed? That is also carried. Okay, it has been... Over to you, Mayor.
Oh, no, you're supposed to ask that the committee rise and report. I'll move that the committee rise and report.
Okay, it has been moved by myself.
No, say all in favor.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Okay, and now Councillor O'Dooney, if you can bring forward the motion from Committee of the Whole.
Okay, it has been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Chapman, that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interest and conflicts taken at the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date as attached hereto and forming part of these minutes be the same and are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Third reading of the bylaws, moved by, with the additional ones, Councillor Michaud, Councillor Deneau. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Clancy and Councillor Thing. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. And just a reminder to Council that we have to finish a few minutes in caucus. Thanks.